known for his studies in molecular dynamics and Raman spectroscopy. He's a laser spectroscopist. And he earned his PhD from the University of Otago in physical chemistry in New Zealand. Thereafter, he spent time at the Rutherford Appleton Labs and University of York, and on his return to India, he joined as a faculty member in the Indian Institute of Science and served as the chair of the Department of Inorganic and Physical Chemistry. He's also served as a visiting fellow, visiting faculty member at various institutions in Japan, Germany, and the UK. His work, of course, involves the application of spectroscopic techniques to address questions in fundamental science, and he's also done some work that's aimed at applied science, such as identifying biomarkers in cells, which is estimated to assist in early cancer detection. Professor Umapathy has several honors, awards, and accolades. Some of those include the Shanti Swarup Bhattacharya Prize, the Swarna Jayanti Fellowship, J.C. Bose National Fellowship, and several others. He is a fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences and the National Academy of Sciences, India. There are a variety of other things to tell you, but I'm sure that you can Google out additional details that may be of interest. Without further ado, let me invite our director, Professor Siva Umapathy, to deliver this lecture on navigating the challenges in building a career in academia. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so thank you very much for the introduction. Of course, there is no need, but still. So since I've been here, 4.5 years now, and I have given this lecture almost 15 years ago when DST started this Inspire program. And I was asked to give a talk to young faculties, and in the post-economic openness of Government of India in 1990. Funding was pretty good, and they said that, they wanted me to speak to young people, tell them what are the challenges that I have faced. So this I did about 15 years ago. And of course, after coming here, having observed how things are evolving here, and I thought that I should also give a talk here, tell you about some things are so trivial that sometimes if somebody had told us, we probably would have been much more easier to handle. And also what is expected is also something is not very clear in our culture, in our system. So I decided to speak about this. So I would like you to, keep in mind, you can ask any questions. Maybe after this talk, we can then have a discussion. You can raise issues, including how to handle issues or how to manage something. In modern day, in today's world, being a faculty is not so straightforward. And, it seems so obvious. It seems that you slip into a job, but it is not. It's much more complex than that. And I wanted PhD students also to start thinking about it. So they can also ask questions on what they have in mind and what challenges they are likely to face as I go along. And before I start, I wanted to say, you will see in my talk a lot of photographs like this. I didn't take them. I stole them from a Facebook. There is something called IISER Photo Bucket Facebook page, which is available. So if any of you are on Facebook, look for IISER Bhopal Photo Bucket. And number of our students are taking pictures and uploading them. And I've seen even some of the faculty have done outstanding photographs. I really love them. So I decided to use those pictures for my talk. So I'm clearly giving copyright and thanks to Photo Bucket for doing a wonderful job in keeping our campus nice and beautiful by these photographs. Okay, so what are the challenges that one faces? That, what is it we don't think about, right? So one of the things we don't think about is, what is the perception? What is the expectation? What do I understand about IISER Bhopal or Indian Institute of Science or any other institution that you are going to? You have a vision. You must have heard about something. Then you have a perception of that institution where you go. And what is the institution expecting from you? The pressures are different depending on which institution you go to, or who you're dealing with, or what kind of levels are you teaching. And of course, research problems, the level of research problem you can choose, how to handle them, how to deliver. Research problem is not just research problem. It's about delivering the data, delivering your research outcome. People don't realize, just say, I'm taking a research. They don't set a target. So questions like that we will discuss. Finance management, this is a pain for most scientists in general. We don't even handle our finances at home. But of course, we are forced to handle finances in an institution like this. You are given a budget and then said, go ahead and do something. And one doesn't realize how complex it is to deal with taxpayers' money. Right? So that's something that I will tell you about. Human resource. This is probably the most difficult and complex and a critical part of your success. If you want to be successful in academics, you have to understand human resource management. This is something that nobody teaches you. Nobody ever mentioned this to you. And this is something that you must be aware of, which I will talk about. And project delivery. Delivery, perception of what is deliverable, what is not deliverable still is debatable. Right? A lot of people think that something, write a report is deliverable. And so how do you build a reputation for yourself as a scientist doing very well, as a faculty doing very well? And of course, how do you define career success? Just awards are not career successes. You could be world famous in India. Nobody will know you outside India or outside your own institution, but you can feel proud about yourself because compared to people around you, you seem to be better. You can't be satisfied with that. You should see, where do I stand in the world, right? And how do I contribute to the world's scientific standards? And of course, objectives of all these. Finally, leadership. As you grow up, right? How to be a good mentor? How to be a good leader? How to contribute to the system? Where can I contribute? How well can I contribute? These are the questions that I'm going to address today. So I will talk about one by one. Perception and expectations, right? So, if you had come to IISER Bhopal maybe 5-10 years ago, the topmost priority might have been about teaching, right? You can ask people who have been here long enough, because the facilities were not what you have right now today. They are all in an extremely small place and trying to manage minimal research at the same time continue to do teaching. But let's say you end up in an institution like IIT Bombay or IISc or well-established institutions. You are expected to hit and run. You can't just sit and say, I've just joined, and so I'll take 6 months to settle down and then see if I can write a proposal, right? That is not allowed. People will monitor you from the day you arrive, right? So that you need to have that understanding that now, having got into an organization, what is the expectations of the organization? What do I expect from myself, right? It's all habits that you can build. It's something that you can develop, but it requires introspection. You need to develop a personal thinking as to what am I anticipating? What is that I would like to do? Right? It's not like, okay, so some senior tells you, oh, now that you've joined, you need to submit a startup funding proposal. Then you say, oh, okay, so I'll write something and then come and make a proposal. Right? So that's why I always ask you, what is your short-term or long-term plans? What is the larger picture of your research program? So which part of the program you want to be funded by the institute? Which part of the program you want to be funded by an external agency? All these you have to think. It's like a company that you are starting. You must have a long-term vision and you must know how to start your vision, right? So these expectations of the system, if you understand very well, you'll feel comfortably fit into the system. You won't get frustrated. You know that you have to teach a course, right? There's, everywhere. So when you arrive, first thing is they'll say, can you teach a course? Then you say, okay, this is my first year. These are the courses I'm comfortable teaching. And so can I teach these courses? But then next year onwards, you should be ready to teach any course, right? So you should be prepared. You can't say, oh, no, I have never, some of the things I've observed is, for example, let's say, give you an example of if you've done, I take the liberty of taking chemistry as an example. I hope there's not many chemists here because they'll get very upset with me. So the wash is not for you. The idea is the following, right? So if I've done chemistry, I mean, I specialize in physical chemistry, chemical physics, in the borderline of physics and chemistry. And then I join IISER Bhopal, they'll say, oh, so you're a physical chemist. So in that case, you can only teach these, right? I tell them if I'm a chemist, I should teach 101. It doesn't matter what your specialization is, right? If you're a master's in economics, you can teach 101. You can't say I'm a macroeconomics, so I cannot teach microeconomics. If you have PhD, if you have BTech in computer science, come on, programming is anybody can teach, right? Like that, you have to understand 101, it doesn't require any specialization. It requires a lot of preparation because dealing with bright children, 300 people in a room is not a straightforward thing to do. That requires a lot of preparation. So that actually you need time to spend, right? Things like that. So you need to have perception of what is acceptable to say yes or no, right? Just because you come from, MIT, they're not going to make you sit in a pedestal and say, oh, he's from MIT, so he can only teach very difficult courses. It doesn't matter. You teach any course that is given to you, right? So this is something that when you go to a new institution, you need to think about, or when you're in an existing institution, how to share a working load with colleagues and friends. And therefore, the pedigree is another problem, right? I think, trust me, I've been in the business for 40 years now. You can trust me that I've seen thousands of biodatas of assistant professors to PhD students and professors too. It makes no difference where I got your PhD from. What matters is how creative you are, how committed you are for your research, how much you are willing to stand up and defend yourself in what you're trying to do, how well you understand what is expected by the institution and how much you're delivering to it. There's also this thing, I'm from this place, I'm from that. These are all, you're lucky that you come from somewhere that you think is great. That's nice, that's wonderful. You got a PhD from IISc is nice. You got from IIT Kanpur is wonderful. I'm from Cornell, great. I'm from Oxford, nice. But that's only a starting point. It's only a stepping point. That there's no connection to how well you will perform. I can tell you, I have seen enough people. I have great friends who are JEE toppers in this country who are full professors. That has nothing to do with what they are doing today. They were JEE toppers in their BTech, right, when they got admission. What they're doing right now has no connection. And so you have to understand that ability to perform and deliver is nothing to do with the pedigree with which what you're coming in. The pedigree only tells you that you've been taught well. You had very good teachers if you come from best institutions. Apart from that, your performance has nothing to do with who taught you or how they taught you. That you must understand, right? So that's the reason why I said. The other thing about departments and colleagues, right? Departments, for example, IISER Bhopal is a very, very complex, diverse departments. If you look at chemistry, biology, physics, mathematics, they all have minimum about 20 faculty. That they can have a conversation, they can have a departmental discussions on various areas which are upcoming. And you take chemical engineering with 7 or 8 people, right? Or DSE, 5 or 6. Economics, 5. When the faculty numbers are very low, right, you need to build a department. There is a reason that you have to consciously think, now that we are here, 4 or 5 of us, how do I now build a department? What is that we can do together? Right? Rather than going individual, saying, I'm expert in this, I will do this, I will do that. Because you are initially starting the department. You are actually putting the foundations for the department. So that has to be conscious. You don't realize that once you join a department, you are a pillar of a department. Every faculty is a pillar of each department. In a larger department, there is equilibrium that stabilizes in. And therefore, some people will do well at some point, some people may not do well at some point. But the reputation of the department is built by a large number of people performing well, and therefore their outcome becomes very well. We used to discuss in IISc, we used to see how does IISc build a career, how does the reputation is built, how is it staying at the top. You can see at any one time, 30 to 40% of faculty will be doing outstanding, right? We have 500 faculties, right? So you need only 30% have to perform outstanding this year. You'll just push the institution to the next level. If everyone thinks like that, it is impossible that for one person to continuously perform for the whole year on the next 10 years. You will have ups and downs. You start very well, goes on, and then after some time, you have slowed down for many reasons, even personal reasons, professional reasons, funding reasons, the direction change reasons. Many reasons you slow down for 2-3 years, and then come back up again. In the meantime, somebody else from another department or your own colleague who was down might now pick up and he'll be at the top. So this performance is a cycle for every one of us, right? So it is important to be together as a department colleague, to back each other up. I'm doing very well now, so let us, help all my colleagues. When I'm down, my colleagues are doing very well. They pick me up and say, don't worry, we are all there, let's work together. And that department functioning is extremely essential for your success. Because if you're very happy, I always tell the faculty or even my own students, if you can't enjoy the company of your own colleagues, how will you come into the department next day? You have to see and say good morning to everybody, right? Or say, hi, how are you? So you need to develop a personality. You need to develop a tolerance to your colleagues. As much as you have tolerance to your family and friends, you realize that you're going to live with them for the next 20, 25 years. It's important to develop that personality to be a team member of a department. Nobody is an isolated island. Nobody can live in a silo. Nobody can say it is my lab, this is the way I want to do it. That means, you're setting yourself a wrong direction, because when you get to the top of the cliff, you'll only dive. There's nobody to bring you down. So that's very important, the departments and colleagues, right? Expectations of this is a complicated stuff. The expectations of directors, when I come here, I see as an institution, I cannot expect what I expect in IISc. We are establishing centers, we are establishing people, we are establishing reputation. So we need to look at how much space we give it to people, how much protection we can give it to people, how much funds we can give it to people, so that you push everybody to perform better. In IISc, it just moves on like a very big ship. It just, momentum, it just keeps going. After that, somebody does well, somebody doesn't do well, it goes. So there is nothing called director expecting something from an individual. There, the director expects performance of a whole department. If a department is not functioning well, the directors will notice, right? Here, I know every one of you. I see every one of you, what your performance every year. So therefore, much more closer interaction. Therefore, my expectations of each individual will be very different, right? Because subjects are different. So therefore, their outcome is going to be different. But again, we ask you to set a target for yourself. Therefore, you set a target for yourself and try to reach the target, right? The worst way to fail in life, there used to be a very famous director in UK who used to say, the saddest part of life about certain individuals is that they set extremely low standard for themselves and they try very hard and fail to live up to it, right? So that's a disaster. You have to set yourself reasonably high standards and try to go towards that. And if you keep trying towards that, you will reach half of it. Then next time you can reach the next half. But if you don't have a target, you set a low standards and say survive today, and you'll stay like that forever, right? When you're young is the time to deliver. So these kind of things, and of course the funding. I'll talk about this more when you come to the finances. Funding is something, is a problem for everybody, right? You are looking at funding for your lab. I'm looking at funding for the institute, right? I have the same conversation that you have with me with the ministries. As much as you tell me we don't have enough money, how can we compete? So I tell the ministry, I don't have enough money, how can IISER Bhopal compete? Then he will say, okay, I'll say the same thing to finance ministry. He'll tell the finance secretary saying, look, your allocation for higher education is so low, how do you expect Indian higher education system to come up? So every has to put their argument and to see how does the money spent across in different levels, right? So it is not that somebody has the money, doesn't want to give you. There's only so much, and that has to be distributed across to all kinds of purposes in the country, and higher education is only one part of the total expense. In the higher education, of course, IISERs, IITs, NITs, central universities, everywhere funding has to be distributed. So there is a budget for each of these. And so we all have to compete, make a justification, explain and give reasons why we need the money. When I can do that, you have to do the same. Right? Every one of you have a clear plan for where your lab is going. How much money do I need next 5 years? How many projects am I handling? Am I handling the projects in such a way that the quality of outcome is so low because I have too many projects? Or am I doing only one project? Although standard is very high, I could do still much more many projects. So these are all judgments that you have to make a call from your own ability to evaluate yourself on where you stand. This is something is a major issue. Family and friends. What does a family expect from you, right? There are certain families, it's the way we sell when you're students, when you're young students. The family always says, if you go to school, you come back, the child says, I got 80%. So what did our neighbor got? He says 85. When he can get 85, why did he get only 80? Right? In the next exam, this kid would have got 90%. They'll say, how much did he get? 90. Oh, good. So you got 10 marks more than last time. How did your neighbor get? 94. See, he's getting 94. Why are you getting only 90? Right? This is a very negative approach to lead life. What your neighbor does, what your colleague does, what his capacity, what your capacity are two different things. Stop comparing them, right? So the families put so much pressure. And the family is what you make of it. It's the conversation you have with your family and friends. If your friends understand that this is the way that it's going to function, and you can be comfortable in functioning at that level. So unfortunately, our system is such, we tend to play for somebody else, not for ourselves. It's always for somebody else's reason we are trying to achieve something. But the greatest profession in this world is what you have. Don't forget that. No other profession allows you to get up in the morning and decide what you want to do. No other profession. No other profession gives you money to go abroad and have a holiday for a week. Right? You have CPDA, submit a paper to a conference. You tell me any other profession who can do that. Anybody can get up at any time, walk in any time, go to your office. I always tell when I give lectures to college students, this is the greatest job because I go around city to city, country to country, give lectures, right, enjoying myself on taxpayers' money, while my students are working very hard in the lab. Nothing can be more satisfying than that. Remember that. That's the truth, right? So you must realize that the amount of freedom and responsibility that comes with it is enormous and you don't realize it. You're given that freedom to decide when to come, what to do, how to do, is because you're all created as an intellectual personalities in a premier institution where you will deliver something. You're expected to deliver something. Nobody's going to stand next to your head and say, have you delivered anything? It is expected every one of you have a consciousness. Every one of you will have an evaluation of yourself by introspection and say, did I do anything this year? Have I published anything this year? You must feel guilty not publishing something. And that is expected of you. That is why this freedom is given to you. Because creativity and innovation comes out of minds which are peaceful and happy. No creativity and innovation can come out of under pressure. Nothing can come out under pressure, right? So this is something that you need to have a discussion and of course introspection, which I already mentioned, which is you need to think what is right and what is not, and therefore set a standard for yourself and try to go up. Research questions. See, this is another thing I find many a times very difficult. So when I came, I'm giving you my example, right? I came back, I was working on lasers. They are expensive. I mean, each laser costs 30 to 40 lakhs. I'm talking about in 1990. Most of you probably were not even born, right? I came and joined IISc. And CNR Rao said, what's a startup grant you need? Make a presentation, like all of you do to me. So I made a presentation. I said, I need $250,000. He said, this is India. No dollars. Tell me in rupees. So I told him, and so at that time it was 18 rupees or something like that, right? So I said, I need about 1 crore or something like that. He said, what? Do you know what your salary is? You will not believe what my salary was when I came back. You will not believe it if I tell you. 3,500 rupees monthly salary. You guys have a party for one night in a restaurant is already 30,000. I'm not saying anything negative about it, because those days that was life, right? 3,500, I used to tell CNR Rao, what salary, what is this? I used to tell him, I can't even fill up my tank, I'm telling you. So we bought a car, so I had to go somewhere. We used to put 5 liters, 10 liters in the car to the distance that you want to go and come back, as an assistant professor at the Indian Institute of Science. So I tell him, it's supposed to be a premier institute. He used to laugh. He said, welcome to India. You settle down, you'll be all right. But the thing was, anyway, we managed to get funding, right? So, but then my first funding came in 1994. So I joined in December 90. CNR gave money for just to buy a spectrometer. That's all. And said, rest of it you manage with what is available. So I wrote a proposal in 90, I can tell you 90, you can go and check my records. December 10th, I joined IISc. 91 March, I submitted a proposal to DST for 2 crores. Or laser instrument based, there's a program called National Laser Mission. And D.D. Bawalkar was the chairman of the committee. So, we struggled. It took 3.5 years to get money. So the institute did not give the full money. It gave only a small amount of money. Although it's not in my area, I had to start working on other kinds of spectroscopy, because otherwise my students will get depressed. You see, you have to remember that. You take PhD students in the first year, and you can't tell them, I don't have instruments, so both of us will sit and read some paper. You have to keep them busy. You have to sit with them and say, now, let's try something different with what we have. Right? You need to spend time thinking of research problems that you can do with the existing facilities. That is where your colleagues are very useful. If you have good friends, you say, look, can I use your facility for some time until I get my instrument? Right? This is what I did in the first 3.5 years. But I find in today's world, some of them think is, because I did only this, when I come and join here, I will only do this. If you don't give me money for anything else, I'm not going to do anything. I mean, that's not the right approach for a faculty, right? You can do other things. You can do computation. You have to do things something that keeps intellectual mind of a student keep active and deliver something. It doesn't have to be that until the instrument comes, there's nothing to do. What if the instrument doesn't come for the next 20 years? So if you didn't get promoted, are you happy with it? That's what will happen. If you don't perform, there's no reason to get promoted. And you should not even expect promotion. Don't even submit an application for promotion. That's the kind of reality that people don't understand. So when you choose a research problem, you have to see, what is that I can achieve in the next 3 years while I'm waiting for my instrument to come. When the instrument comes, you don't say, I'm going to break the world record on something. Before even your students are trained on the instrument, you start thinking of a problem which is world-solving problem. Right? You have just got in, you're just setting up something. So the first thing to do is, let's get some result. Let's both of us feel happy that the instrument is working. It's working to the specification that we expected. Let us produce some data and publish a paper. It doesn't have to be in the best of journals in the world. Opportunity will come for that. So initially, when you start your research group, you have to start with expectations that you can deliver. At least people know that you are doing something. You can't say, I've got the instrument doesn't work, the company guy is useless, he cheated me. That's no excuse. For me, that's just no excuse, because I have worked on instruments. Yes, it does go wrong. You need to get to the bottom of it and say, why is it wrong? Why is it not working? So that's something, that kind of tenacity, perseverance in continuing to develop a laboratory is necessary, at least in the first 10 years. Once if you set up the lab, you will see that, this is all things that you will find that's going to fall in place with time so quickly. This I have observed not only with me, with many people, right? Initially, you will have difficulty getting very great students. Some people will come, they say, oh, I heard, so let's do something. But then after 2-3 years, you start publishing well, you start doing well, the best students starts coming to you. When the best students start coming to you, you start doing much better high-risk problems, right? There are research problems which are low risk, which are high risk. So I can tell you, I've always said this in many places, I can tell you again here, if I was not in IISE, I would not have done anything I have done in the last 30 years. Some of the things I was able to do is because the students themselves come and say, sir, give me something that's really difficult. Then I say, okay, listen, this is a very interesting futuristic topic. I don't know where this will go. I'm also new. It is in my field, right? I'm thinking of this new idea. It may work out or it may not work out, but let's try. Let's try for the first 2 years. If both of us are successful, let's go for it. If not, turn around. So like that, I had 3 or 4 students which set me up in a different level. So it is also depends on the quality of students that you take and the amount of communication you have with students. That's what I talked about human resource. So in deciding which project to give it to which student, you have to decide about how do you judge a student about quality of project versus depth of knowledge and the perseverance. Some experiments requires really complex processes. Some students are very sloppy. They don't concentrate. They will do quickly something and go away, right? And it's difficult to train them. And there are some students, you give them something, they'll be in the lab for hours. So you need to choose which student is good for what project and then give them the right project, right? That's what is about human resource management. So the level of difficulty that you want to look at a research project is proportional to the amount of risk you're willing to take. Now, in the initial phases of my career, in the first 3 years, I would take low-risk projects so that I can deliver and prove to the world I'm capable of doing something. Just because you have a faculty position doesn't automatically assume that you are great. You need to prove. You need to prove that you are good. That you can only prove by publication. If you don't publish, then nobody knows. Even if you say you are good, there is no reason to believe that you are good. So the risk level has to be very low. As you go to next level, higher and higher level, you take much higher risks. Then world starts noticing you. When you start publishing papers in the best journals, then the world suddenly says, oh, somebody from IISER Bhopal publishing this interesting. Follow this guy. Then they monitor your papers, then they write to you, they call you for an international conference. That's the way things evolve in a profession. Finance management. You see, unfortunately, when you are using taxpayers' money, right, the amount of caution that you must have in spending is extremely important. There are rules which is set out by Government of India, A taxpayer, this is why you have RTI and all these things. Taxpayer can ask you, where did you spend the money? I paid you tax, show me what you did. That is why there is something called GFR, General Financial Rules. It's a book. Anyway, you don't need to know. That is why we have audit section, we have purchase department, we have audit department, we have administrators. Because they are supposed to be expert in learning the rules of how you can spend Government of India money. I know it is frustrating. You know, when I joined IISc, I also had problems trying to say, my God, what is this? So many papers I have to sign. You know, so many quotations you have to get. You know, you have to write down descriptions, explain everything. I'm an expert. I'm telling you it is good. Why are you asking so many questions? It's not about whether you are expert or not. So when something is done, it's not only done very fairly and honestly, but even in record, it has to seem to be fair and honest. That is the reason why you are filling up those forms. On paper, on file, 20 years later, somebody picks down your files. They have to look back and say, proper procedures have been followed. I want to tell you, you probably don't know, every year, you know, there is something called Controller of Auditor and Audit General in Delhi, right? They have offices in all cities. So all central government institutions are externally audited by these agencies. So they come one day, send a letter to me saying, our auditors will come to inspect your institution for financial regularization, and 5 of us will come. We'll spend 2 weeks and check your institutional functioning. They come, every year they come. They'll go to some office saying, okay, tell me something. They say, these are the files. Pull that file, pull this file, pull that file. They randomly pick up files, take it to their room, sit down, read line by line. Right? After 2 or 3 weeks, they'll give you a big 3-page, 5-page, 10-page report saying your institute is missing in these procedures, you have violated these laws, right? All these. And then they ask me to explain. I have to explain, not you. Then I ask registrar and financial controller, all these, saying, what do we do? How do we explain this? And 90% of the time, since our intentions are honest, we tell the truth. And then they say, please write down and sign. And we sign saying, look, the faculty wanted it urgently because as a special permission we gave. And so, but I can't. So this time, for example, they told me that I'm being too lenient. I'm not being very strict with the rules. I said, look, I'm following the rules. He said, yes, sir, you're following the rules. But you must get a bit more tough. You can't just relax all the time. There are some prescription given to the head of the institution to give certain amount of relaxation in certain rules, not in all rules. Right? So we do. I mean, you know, we look at all of you and say, okay, you're all struggling hard, so we have to do that. Right? So there is a responsibility in spending. And the other thing you don't realize is that there's a deadline for everything. If you're given consumable to be spent by 31st of March, you have to spend. If you don't spend, money goes back to the government. What you don't realize, if I have left 4 crores on 1st of April, unspent, I want you to understand why there are rules and regulations that I keep getting tough, sending emails, letters to you. If I leave 4 crores on 1st of April, in the next year's budget, they will cut 4 crores. Then we are the losers, not them. So if they give you money to spend, we must spend. That's why I keep pushing you. Many of you don't realize, in the last 2-3 days, I have received letters from many of you asking me to permit you to get the delivery after 1st of April. I've cancelled. I said I disapproved all of them because that is not possible. You cannot move from one financial year to next financial year. It is not allowed. You cannot do that. Right? So finance management is very, very difficult. Now with these rules, you not only have to run your group, you have to think about the future. So I always say that if you're an experimentalist or even theoreticians with a lot of funding with HPC, high performance computing, being a scientist today, being a faculty today is equivalent to being a CEO in a company. right? Because you have to think, what do I need next year to run my lab? I have 4 students this year. If I'm going to take 2 more students next year, I'll have 6 students. If I have 6 students, what will be the cost of running my laboratory? What is going to happen 5 years now? Now I have 2 projects running. They're all going to finish in 2025, in March. So when should I submit my proposal so that 2025 March I have funding coming in so that I'm not stuck with no money? I can tell you this is what I have done in the last 30 years. You can ask anybody in IISc. In IISc, we don't go to directors for money. Startup grant is given, that's the end of it. You can't go and say, can you give me 10 lakhs, 5 lakhs? Not allowed. We don't even think. Actually, I've never gone to them because I write proposal, keep on writing. And of course, success of a proposal is 30 to 40%, maybe 50%. Right? It's never 100%. I can tell you in the last 3 years, 2 of my proposals got rejected. Why it got rejected is a different reason, but it was rejected. But that's the reality of life, right? Then I cannot give up saying, okay, I got rejected, so I just give up. No, I have to write. So I'm now submitting one more in CRG. We all have to do that. We have to plan your laboratory. Think that it is your home, you're running, your career. You're doing a hobby in an institution, right? It is not like a job, right? You come anytime you like, you do whatever you like. That is a hobby. It is not a job. If you're doing a hobby, you must then plan, execute very well. And if you don't, then you get into trouble. Funding, one of the things I find is that some people don't spend enough time searching for sources of funding. This, I think that seniors must help. There are so many agencies, right? Center for Earth Sciences, this is Department of Earth Sciences, Oceanic Sciences. You have DRDO, you have ISRO, you have Non-Conventional Energy Resources, Ministry of Forest, Ministry of Electronics. Everybody has research projects. Coal India, we have sent out, So we hired a grant manager in the last 3 years, asked him to give you messages, information as to where all you can get funding. Why are we doing that? Because many of you probably don't think. So you must read those emails that come from the grant manager to see, can I apply any one of these and keep my lab running? That effort has to come in. It has to come naturally, right? Less you depend on the institute, more freedom you will have. If you're going to depend for finances from the institute, you'll get stuck with the institute forever for your day-to-day survival. That should not happen. Each one of you should have your own funding. So you do your teaching, take care of your research. Then you are on your own, nobody disturbs you. But if you have to keep for funding, tomorrow if something breaks down in your lab, you don't have money, the repercussions are large, which I don't know whether many of you think about this. If there is a non-functioning instrument in your lab and your students are not able to use it, the students are going to get depressed, unhappy. If 2 students get unhappy, they make another 5 unhappy. When the other 5 unhappy, next year you won't get a student, I can tell you. They will say, oh, no, don't go to this lab. They don't have an instrument that doesn't work. Right? I'm telling you by experience. I talk to my students. They always tell me, sir, this is what we discuss. The juniors, as soon as they arrive, they ask, who should I go join? Who will be the right person? Where can I do project? What probability me getting a job if I finish a PhD? How soon can I finish my PhD? How many papers will I get? These are the questions that they want to know. So if your lab is not very active, the quality of students you're going to get not going to be too good. If the students of quality is no good, your research quality will come down, and also rate at which your publication will also come down. So it's very important to keep those aspects into consideration. The other thing is about mixing money, right? I get all sorts of strange requests. Somebody comes and tells me that 5 terabyte hard disk is a consumable. How do I justify that? 5 terabyte of hard disk. it can't be a consumable. It has to go under equipment, right? And then you try to hoodwink purchase department, and they don't know what to do. They try to tell you, sir, you can't put this in consumable. It is not consumable. You say, yeah, but it'll go bad in 10 years. Yeah, you might retire in 20 years, so we can retire you now. I mean, anything you have a lifetime, right? You buy a car, you can't say, any equipment you buy. Today, I don't know whether you know, right? So, international norm of equipment today is any company which supplies a equipment can only guarantee you for 10 years. Actually, it has come down to 8 years now. Because the technology is moving so fast, even if you buy a washing machine or a refrigerator, they don't guarantee you beyond that. So you can't call it consumable because every 10 years you have to replace them. So that kind of confusion should not happen, right? And people spend the money, then we have to refund, all sorts of things happen. So that's something that you need to make sure you don't do that, right? Human resources management, which I already told you, you need to know how to interact with each other, whether it is colleagues or students. And you have to understand the psychology of students. It's always true. As much as you are, students are also like that. Some students work very hard for 6 months, then they slow down for 2-3 months, and then they come back up again. But if you are in touch with the students, if you are talking to them regularly, you figure out that the students are slowing down. And sometimes I call the students and say, so what? You have a new girlfriend or what? They'll laugh and say, no, sir, why are you asking like this? I said, you slowed down in the last 2-3 months. I don't think you're doing. Where are you going these days? Then they say, no, sir, I'm bored. I don't know. Nothing is working. Everything is failing. Whatever I do, I'm not getting results. Then what I normally say, go home, take 2 weeks off, go home and come back. Just forget about research. Take a break, right? And then come back. Because you can't work when you are not concentrating, when you are not happy, when things are not well, right? So you need to communicate with students continuously. They must feel that you are there for them. Then you will see that they will attract more and more better students' quality that way, right? And similarly, for example, all these students, when they come to you, they sometimes feel, I'm sure you will know that, in the first semester, they're very confident, they think they can conquer the world. Anything I can do, sir, no problem, give me. Then 3 months later, they figure out, oh, it's not as easy as I expected, right? That is normal, right? Most students don't know the difficulty of a project because they're first time trying to come across something like that. So you must be psychologically tuned to such things. You must anticipate, when a student comes and says, very confident in the first semester, you let them. I've had students who come and tell me, I said, how are you? So what do you want to do for your thesis? He will actually tell me a research problem. Sir, I want to study DNA on C60. He has no idea what C60 is. He has no idea what DNA is. I'm sure he heard from somewhere it is a very interesting topic, right? What I do, I said, very good, good idea. So why DNA? No, sir, I think it's interesting. I said, good. So why don't you do one thing? Next week, you make a presentation to me on what you want to study on DNA and C60. And 99% I can tell you, he'll come and tell me, sir, can I take 1 more week? Because he starts reading and then suddenly figures out things are not as simple as he expected, right? Then 1 week later, he'll come, sir, I don't think I'm completely ready, but I'll make a presentation. So you make them realize, and then when they make presentation, you ask hard questions, right? What is the structure of DNA? What's the structure of C60? Right? How does these two interact? Why should they interact? Are they positively charged, negatively charged? You ask simple questions, then you say, oh, I didn't think like that, sir. I said, good, go think about it. Then after 2-3 months, you realize it's going to be complicated. Sir, it is tough, sir. I said, okay, good. So I'll give you something for you to do. First 6 months, let's do this project. While you do this project, you keep thinking about your problem, right? So students are students, right? You have to give them that space. They will be ambitious. They think they can solve all the problems in the world, but you need to give the space and say, okay, let's look at this together, right? So you will see that they will start understanding where you are coming from, what your objectives are, and they start depending on you for knowledge and guidance. And then you start getting better students in dealing with them. So psychology of dealing with them is important. Similarly, interacting with these people are very important, right? I mean, people don't realize, when visitors come, you make a presentation or you go to a proposal presentation, I can tell you, I have experienced it. I mean, how can I say, you go to a committee and make a presentation, a member of that committee who doesn't understand what I'm saying will ask the most silliest question. You feel like saying, how the hell are you a member of this committee? You don't even know this, right? But then you smile and say, very good question. So you prop up his ego, right? So his ego is already up. Then you say, actually, that's not true. This is the way it works. Then he will say, oh, good idea, very good, well done, good, right? So this is something you have to anticipate. In any system, no system is perfect. Every system has its own issues. There's no point in getting upset and angry with set of evaluators or referees when you try to make a presentation on proposals or writing even a paper. Sometimes, referee reports are useless. I mean, absolutely. There are times that I've called the editors in the US and said, some of them I know, so I send a mail to an editor and say, hey, listen, I need to speak to you. Tell me a good time to talk to you, right? This is India time, this is US time. Then you'll say you call me at 8 a.m. US time, right? 9:30 here. So I called him and said, did you see my paper? I know that's why you're calling. I said, did you read the referee reports? She said, I did. I said, looks like some upstart has written. He doesn't even understand what he has written. She said, I know you're going to say this. So I said, what do I do? Then you'll say, why don't you do one thing? You write your response politely and suggest 2 more referees. I'll send it to somebody else. That's what we do. That is what is called evaluation. Because sometimes some people don't understand the science but still willing to opine, right? This is what I call is moral corruption in this international scene. When you don't know something, I cannot go and comment on chemical engineering. I don't know anything about process engineering. Who am I to give an expert opinion on what is correct or not? Right? We must have correct in our mind as when I make a statement, can I back it up with substance of science or engineering? Not just casually make a statement, right? So that's something, all of you. This is going to happen to you continuously in your life, and you need to calmly, quietly deal with it. Then you will continue to be successful. You get what I said here, right? The humility. If you get angry and upset because you are very good, and the guy in the committee is not so good, and I can tell you, he will bring you down to his level. The system will bring you down to their level. The best thing to do is, okay, he happens to be in power, doing very well. The director thinks he knows everything. I listen to him. I'm sure another director will come in another few months. And we'll deal with him. Right? But the bottom line is it's your life. It's your success. You decide where you want to go. It doesn't matter who the director is. It doesn't matter who the committee member is. And that's something you need to know how to communicate. If you don't communicate well, that you're going to be in trouble. The other thing that is not happening enough is communication with each other, right? I can tell you in my experience or in my colleagues' experience in IISc, I'm just sharing it so that, many of you can think about. When you find something interesting in your lab, if a student has done very well, some interesting news that you've got, some interesting ideas have come, many of my colleagues, all of us say, hey, listen, I've got a fantastic paper I'm submitting to JAX. I want to talk about it in the department. So they give a department seminar of their latest work that they have achieved. So everybody else shares and gives ideas before the paper is submitted, right? So that's something that we all have to learn to share knowledge, which we don't spend enough time. If you share knowledge, you'll find collaborations. You'll start working with each other, right? And that makes your life much more peaceful because you have better friends. You'll start making better friends, better company. And you can have more intellectual discussion when you want to, or social discussion when you want to. The bottom line is, it's important to share knowledge and spend time. Reputation, as I said, I already told you briefly, is something that you build for yourself. It doesn't come on its own. Reputation is a very dangerous thing. It's reaching to the top. It's very difficult to stay there. To stay there, you have to continually perform well in all sorts of aspects. This is what the options are. You have to deliver. You have to continue to deliver at the high level. Once if you reach that level, if your delivery comes down, then you have lost your value. And you'll be there as long as your friends are supporting you. The friends who support you are not there, you'll be dropping down thousands of feet down very dangerously. So it's better to stay calm. The success should not get to you. Be happy with what you have achieved and be polite and friendly with you and continue to deliver. And then, many people realize that I can only publish a paper if everything is great, if I can show that this is the best. Even some of the best papers are papers where they have shown most complex experiments leading to negative results. Because the amount of work and time and effort that you have put in, if that is scientifically valid, a negative result is as equivalent to a positive result. Because then people know that means this process is no good. This is true particularly in biology, where some of my colleagues with whom I work with, right? When you say something, they keep on thinking that this is what is the target, so let's keep working. And then you find that the target doesn't work, then that's 2-3 years of work is gone. But still, that sends a message saying you're targeting the wrong product. So things like that. So that we need to work on it. These targets and deadlines. I think, most of us don't have deadlines in what we do. For anything, whether it is a project completion, whether it is, correcting mark sheets and delivering it in the 6-shop hotel. So this is something all of you must realize is an extremely important part of your profession. Deadlines for completing a project. When you start a project, you know that this is what you want to do. If you don't have a deadline, I can tell you it can keep on going. There is no end to research projects. Right? You can keep on sidestepping. Your objective is something. Let's say you've taken money from ISRO or DRDO. They expect you to deliver something. Halfway, you find something else is more interesting. You deviate. Right? And then you suddenly come back 2.5-3 years later, DRDO says, where is the result? Then you say, oh my God, we went in this direction, we forgot what we are supposed to do. So this evaluation must happen among yourselves within the team. So deadlines of delivering is important, which is what the objectives. There are multiple options for delivery, right? The delivery can be, if it is, for example, a SERC project, SERB projects, you might have set out some objectives in your proposal. But you may not reach all objectives, like 4 or 5 objectives. You may reach only 2 or 3 of these. The rest of them you may not, but then you will find something else, right? You might have discovered some other processes. You can still put them together as a report. That's acceptable. As long as scientific output of high quality has come out, even if your objective is not met in what you started with, in science, that is what is exciting about science. If you can, I always tell students and my people, young people writing proposals, if you're going to tell me what you're going to deliver in 3 years exactly in science, that's called practicals, not research. Right? If you're going to do research, you're guessing on these fundamental questions I'm proposing. If I do these experiments, I'm likely to reach there. You don't know whether you'll reach there. If I ask somebody in a proposal, are you sure you can do this in 3 years? Oh, 100%, sir. Then I say, you're not getting the project. That means you know what you're doing. I mean, this is the practicals given to a master's student. If you want to do research, your exploratory research, you take an element of risk. The level of risk may be different. Some risk may be 20%, some risk is 50%, some risk are 80%, which is what is called blue sky research. You have no idea where you're going to get, but you try, right? Things like that. Success, success to me is about happiness or being knowledgeable about what you have studied and being able to share that knowledge with people, share your experiences, right? And it must be unique. It must be at the frontier of science. Just doing same thing as somebody else is doing. You should always look back. Choosing a research problem, sometimes people add value to the research problem. Somebody has done something. Many a times when students are new, this is what they try to do. You force them to come up with a research problem. Right? They will tell you, sir, they've done silicon. I think I'll try calcium. You ask them why? Sir, nobody has done calcium. Great. So if nobody has done something, doesn't mean you have to do this, right? There must be a reason. Why silicon was used? What is the nature of silicon such that particular product required a silicon? So where is that particular product is failing, for which you need to do research to improve the quality of the product? So what aspects of silicon is not available in silicon but matches in, say, calcium? Simple questions like that, right? Framing questions which are extremely scientific and sensible is extremely important. People don't. People just say, oh, let's try, because anyway, 20 papers, 30 papers, 40 papers. Somebody told me that, this guy has 470 papers. He must be given some award. I said, then we have to give it to Arun Shourie first. Arun Shourie had an article every day in Indian Express. So he must have 1,500, 2,000 papers. Right? Yan Ram in Hindu publishes papers every day. You can't go give Bhatnagar award because he has got 3,000 articles in Hindu. You look at innovation, you look at creativity. It's just publication doesn't matter. I always say that publication must have a meaning. Somebody should read your papers. If nobody is reading, what's the point? It's like putting it in archives, right? Nobody reads anyway, it will be filed. So that's important. You have to see what is the creative component in a paper when you finish the paper writing, or the student writes a paper. I can tell you, I keep telling my younger colleagues, the only paper I've ever written in my life after joining IISE is the very first paper I wrote in 95, a paper in chemical physics letters. I can tell you after that I don't write papers. I tell my students, you write. It's your thesis. I can tell you I've corrected this manuscript 7 times, 10 times, 15 times. But then after the third paper, they can write fantastic paper. Because when they go as a faculty, they have to write their own papers, right? So we have to train them, right? So that kind of sharing knowledge or training, and that's very important. That's what is called success. Tomorrow when one of your students go as a faculty or a scientist or work in a company, does very well, you feel good and they come and see you and say, thank you, sir. Nothing else. Actually, I've told the students, give me $1,000 every month, but they are not listening. Thank you. What? So what? Thank you. I spent 5-7 years training you, man. You're getting now $50,000 a month. Give me $1,000. No, but that's what gives you happiness, right? They send you a mail every Christmas, New Year saying, how are you, sir? Is everything okay? That's success, Everything else is meaningless. Because these students, even after you retire, will write to you. You can feel good about yourself, that you have contributed to the system. All these awards and recognitions, I've got them also, so don't misunderstand me. I mean, people should not say, he has got it, so he can preach. I got it. I don't know how I got it, but still I don't understand. But anyway, the bottom line is, in IISE, they don't care. You can get Bhatnagar, nobody cares, right? Nobody cares, I'm telling you, trust me. I thought, the first time when I got the evening news, they called me and said, tomorrow morning news will come. Congratulations, Bhatnagar. I said, thank you. So next day morning, well dressed up, I was walking around the campus. Nobody noticed me. I mean, it was in the newspaper, God's sake. I mean, everywhere it says Bhatnagar Award, Umapathy, IISE. Then I was telling my friend, what's wrong with this place here? He said, there are hundreds of Bhatnagar awardees. Who cares for your Bhatnagar award? Then I said, okay. So then I realized it has no meaning. Because, I can also tell you one more realization. When I moved into an apartment complex, my neighbor was a businessman. He said, what do you do, sir? I said, I'm a professor. He said, where? Indian Institute of Science. What science? I said, good. He brought me down to zero instantaneously, right? I thought I can proudly tell everybody I'm from Indian Institute of Science. This guy didn't even know what Indian Institute of Science was. This is your neighbor, right? So that's the value you have. No success of awards, IISER Bhopal has no meaning. What matters is your students, the papers that you publish, somebody sends an email to you, look, I saw your paper, I really enjoyed reading it. That's what is success is all about. When your students have a fantastic job, come and say, sir, now I'm moving into this position, that position. Good, great, congratulations, well done, right? That's what is success is all about. So I want you to think about all these. Finally, leadership. You see, leadership is always forgotten, in the sense that since the time I have come here, you can ask all the deans, since it's a new institution, all decisions that we make in the institute, I make sure that they're all part of it. They debate, discuss, and decide what kind of decision we should make. And why are we making the decision? Because growing up, building an organization is not easy. And if you don't have an egalitarian approach of taking everybody in together, right? You just cannot survive. Because you are in a system where everybody else has to back you up to survive. You're not an individual, right? When an institution has to perform very well, on the average, if many of you perform well, then I can go and demand more money from the government. That is important. It is the collective effort that's going to convert the reputation of the institution and the organization in the long run. So you start with yourself. The first thing to do is, before asking, am I doing very well? You have to say, how can I contribute to the department doing very well? If you ask that question, you will do very well because you will want to contribute to the department's success. If the department successes, then you will say, how can I contribute to the institute? Right? And that's the way the institute can grow. So all these aspects of, I put these two because some people should realize, right? This has happened in places. There are some, what Sikh principle in management means? Some people become leaders because of the circumstance, right? Let's say somebody becomes a dean. I'm not talking about IISER Bhopal, so don't start analyzing what I'm saying. I'm talking about generally somebody becoming, let's say director, which is easy because it's me, right? So let's say somebody becomes director. The worst principle with which you can manage an organization in management parlance is called Sikh principle. That's called shining in contrast. So I surround myself with a bunch of people who are absolutely useless, who will always agree with me. So I shine in contrast. My ego is satisfied every day. Nobody will counter what I say because they'll say, sir, you're great. Oh, what an idea, sir. Right? You can survive 5 years and imagine that you've done wonderful. Then, if you look at these bright people in departments, some of them in the first year, they will say, my God, I got stuck with this stupid director. What do I do? He doesn't listen to us. He's not doing anything. The Stockholm syndrome is a guy who has been captured by somebody, and when he immediately got captured, you have no choice because you're now caught and you're stuck in a situation where you're captured by this guy. A terrorist, for example, is taking somebody in. First few days, you keep complaining, my God, come on, man, let me go. Why are you doing this? Torturing, all these. After some time, you have no choice, you're going to leave. Then you start liking the kidnapper. Right? Because you have no choice. You start admiring the kidnapper. That is called Stockholm Syndrome in psychology. So many institutions, many people in leadership, if you have a sick principle of leadership surrounded by sycophants, you end up having lots of faculty who are in Stockholm Syndrome. They have no choice but to accept this. Then they say, oh, he's nice. He's bad, he's only kidnapped me, but otherwise he gives me food. It's like that, right? And that's no good. So this is an issue in management of leadership. That if you're conscious of that, right? If you're conscious of the fact that you need to have an honest conversation, true conversation, opinions may differ, judgment may be different. See, that you have to understand. I mean, there's no way that all of us will agree on one issue, because we are all intellectual enough to find logic in everything, and we can disagree on issues. But then that is why people have hierarchy. Finally, somebody makes a decision and takes responsibility for it. Because decision is not about decision making, it's also about taking responsibility. So that's what happens when there is leadership which is open. And I want each one of you to think that you're a leader of your group, you're a director of your group. In the US, they call themselves directors, right? You get a project, you become a director of that project. I mean, you ask him what director, he has 3 people working for him. So that's a different approach to life. But the thing is, in principle, each one of you are potential directors. And you must have the conscience, say, I need to perform, I need to protect my students to perform, I want my department to perform, I want my institute to perform. With this kind of objective, all of you will do very well. Trust me, it'll just go like nothing, just easy. And that you must be very aware of it. I brought this back again because now that at the end of 1 hour, now you can look back on your perceptions of expectations of what you would do in the next few weeks, and you can look back and discuss them with yourself and say, is my perception of the institution, my perception of myself, my perception of my lab, has it changed or should it need change? That I think I want you to think about. Finally, I just wanted to thank you. Before I thank, I want you to remember this. I always call these 3 C's. Connect with people positively. Extremely important. You need, if somebody doesn't want to talk to you, you need to worry about it. You need to think, my God, what did I do wrong? Am I unpleasant to people? So did I say something which is made somebody think wrong about me? You must introspect. You can't say, oh, I'm too good. I don't care if they don't talk to me. I mean, that's a bad attitude. Right? So connecting with people is important. Consciousness is important. Are you doing something wrong to people, to your project? Are you doing something wrong with your reports? Conscious moral values are extremely important. And finally, commitment to what you came to achieve. You came to achieve for teaching, research at your level, institutional level, and at the international level. So I want to see as many faculties as possible at the international scene in the next 20 years down the line. Think of that as your target. Because if you set targets for yourself very low at the national level, see, you have an opportunity to travel. You've been funded for CPDA is there. Every year you must attend at least one international conference. 5 years down the line, if you publish enough paper, the same conference people will call you to give a talk. You have to ask the question, how many international talks have I given? How many plenary lectures in international conferences I have given? In local, if you have enough friends, everybody will call you. So that is not added. So I will not count any paper that you go and give talks in India. So what is your reputation? Where do you stand in the world in your subject matter? That is very important. And that keeps you on the ground. You go to a meeting, international meeting. I'll tell you, every time I go to an international conference, I come back with so much energy. Because you listen to so many talks and saying, my God, where are these guys going? Where are we? Then come back and say, let's just sit down and discuss this. Right? Set up new ideas. How do we concentrate on competing with these guys? And that's the bottom line you should have. So thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Open up the floor. before
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
open up the floor for some questions, discussion.
I'll sit down. So go ahead, feel free to ask anything you like, anything you have in mind. My God, I feel like I've been running the institute on a sick principle. Yeah, go ahead. Very good question. I didn't talk about it, I should actually. Whether it is IISE or IISER Bhopal, wherever it is, right? We look at two things. 90% of the time, most of the people who have applied, when they are shortlisted, they would have very good set of publications. They'll make very good presentations, and they're very smart. All of them. What we are looking for is, how different is your proposed research for your career for the next 5-10 years compared to what you have done? If you're going to do what you did for your PhD and postdoc, you know that you're not spending enough time thinking about where you want to go. I mean, while you're doing postdoc or PhD research, you're always reading outside the box. This is why I tell PhD students, please attend seminars of other topics. Right? Because the diversity in which you can go, you don't know where you're going to end up. Right? You start somewhere, but then your life leads you somewhere else as opportunities open up. So we have to see what is the level of risk you are taking in your research proposal that you're presenting. And when you propose something, how well can you defend that proposal? There are experts sitting in the room. So we ask you, please tell us about what you want to do in the future, right? And they make presentations. And then they will tell you, these are my ideas. The experts will ask, why does it work? What is the reason? And you must have good scientific fundamental knowledge. And if your basic is not very strong, and we also ask questions on fundamentals, if there is a suspicion, for example, during your presentation, you make a mistake of saying something very silly, which is scientifically not correct, then you get dragged into some basic questions to see whether you have understood the science better or not. Or, in today's world, there are two ways to do a PhD. One is, the supervisor will tell you today morning, for the next 3 weeks, do this project. And then give the data to me. And then the professor will write the paper, submit it, you'll be the first author, you'll get a nice paper. Then another 1 month later, he'll give another set of project, you produce it, give it to the professor, and the professor writes the paper. Now those kind of people, I can tell you their fundamentals won't be very strong. If they're asking for new ideas, they don't know how to come up with new ideas. So they'll give this subsequent incremental ideas from their PhD thesis. But if I tell you, okay, I got you started now, in the next group meeting, tell me what do you think we should do, then that is where you'll have to start thinking. You start reading and saying, what should I do? What are the papers published? Where is the status of the field? What is a new addition I'm making? So we are looking for innovation in the research projects and ability to teach well. That's the other thing. If you can't even logically present your proposal to a committee, there's no hope that you can teach well. So these are all graded by people who are in the committee and then decided. Yeah, Ashish.
Sir, along with academic careers, I'm sure other students may also be interested in non-academic careers. So
Right.
Are the advices different or?
Oh, no. Yes, non-academic career, yeah. So I have to tell you, at least 5-6 of my students are working in industry. But when they worked with me, they are working on extremely basic physics, right? Atomic structure, dynamics and stuff. But they're working for pharmaceutical companies, FMCG companies, right? So one thing I've always taught them is what you learn in a PhD program is problem solving. How do you, given a problem, how do you compartmentalize into smaller problems, and then how do you find out solution for each one of them, and then how to bring them together to solve a problem. So one thing is that I was a consultant for, say, Procter & Gamble. I was consultant for Unilever. So I go once a month to these companies, sit down, listen to their presentations. I come back, I talk to my students. Yesterday they talked to me. One of the questions they say is, how do I make a floating soap for attracting children to go into bathtubs? Simple question, right? But soaps always, when you put them, goes down. Now, in a company, when they ask a question like this, you'll have to find a solution. So then you have to know what floats and why does it float? What is surface tension? What's the total surface area? What's the weight? So basic physics and chemistry goes into this, right? And then combination of making them, surviving them. So you need to have the personality to solve a problem. And the other thing industries look for is teamwork. And one of the typical questions they ask, which I have done in many interviews, because I sit with these guys, they call me when they want to select scientists. A simple question you can ask, tell me the best friend and the worst friend you had in your college. And if you really had a good friend, you will immediately say, Ashish was my friend. If you think best friend, if you have to search for, you lost the job. That means you are not holding a relationship with anybody. Who is your bad friend? Sangha Chakma. If you say that immediately, then you are definitely not getting the job. Right? So these are all simple psychological stuff which reflects your personality. And so they want team players. They want players who are willing to share knowledge, at the same time go up. So non-academic aspects, those are the aspects that industries look at. Of course, the basic concepts are the same. Innovation, depth of knowledge, quality of publication. And the other thing, how well you explain your research, right? So like I said, if I say, can you tell me about what you have done in your PhD? If you start from your first chapter and drag me for 1.5 hours, I'll say, okay, thank you. You lost your job, right? So how crisply can you summarize what you have achieved? All those things make a difference in presentation. And that you have to learn. That's the most important thing in the non-academic environment.
We can perhaps continue discussions in a more informal setting over tea and encourage the audience to join us. So,
Sure.
I'd like to thank the director for taking the time to make this insightful presentation. I may be too far gone for this, but I'm certain that many of our colleagues will benefit from the presentation.
I hope so. Thank you.